Welcome to the Vault Podcast, everybody. My name is David Wakerley. Today is a very, very special episode. In fact, it's a unique one-off episode. We're going to forego all of the usual introductions and fluffery and get straight to the content. With me is Steve Ribe. That's how you say it. You have to say it with roll your R's. I believe that. How you doing, Steve?
I'm good. How are you?
Steve is part of our IT team at Hillsong Church. He looks after the cloud. Looks after He looks after our infrastructure technology here at church.
Yep.
But also dabbles in the world of AI, which is what we're talking about today. Steve, I'm going to tell you why I called you up and said, I need you to jump on the podcast with me. I'm going to explain it to you right now. I'm going to say a week ago, I had what was you commonly call an existential crisis. And that was because I had seen so much of the development of AI, and I've seen people talking about the impact that it's going to have on society and job and the workplace, but also the very specific existential crisis that I was having was about my own family. Because my son, who is about to finish high school, his last year of high school this year, he's about to go and pursue a career. I don't know, go do further study. And this, to me, is the first time, and this is a great point to start off with, for the first time in history, my son, with the popularization of AI tools and AI technology and the mainstreaming of that, even in the last 1 month, means that for the first time he gets to be part of that generation that can make a decision based on the knowledge that AI is here and is not going anywhere, and it's going to affect a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
So
no pressure,
but hey buddy, let's talk about this. And so I'm sitting there just thinking about what my son's going to do, and I'm going to have to I want to learn as much as possible to guide him in that decision, because there'll be nothing worse than going to university and pursuing something that is literally evaporating as he's learning. So that's why you're here, Steve. Can you help me?
I'll do my best.
So this is the topic for today: AI and pastoring. Yes, your own personal existential crisis. Everyone can have that. But I was looking around on YouTube, and there's only a few videos up where people talk about the impact that it can have on pastoring. And so today, this video is for you if you have no idea what's going on and you've missed it. Well, this is not necessarily the primer for you to start with. You could probably search Google and YouTube for a couple of videos on the impact of AI on society. Do a couple of searches like that. Watch a couple of videos. There's a lot we can talk about. What I want to focus on, what it means for pastoring in the very near future, like now and very, very soon. So it's not a comprehensive look at the pros and cons. I've got my notes here, part of which were written by AI, which I'll get to. So this is not a comprehensive look at the pros and cons. There's a lot of negative that is going to happen. But here's my current stance, Steve. I don't know if you agree with this. It's here. It's going to be affecting us somehow. How do we respond to that? Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Like it's already affecting society.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's already starting to disrupt industries. With layoffs and everything like that.
Yeah, so what are you doing now with it? Like in your role as in IT, what are you using AI tools for now?
Basically, I'm using it to speed up what I'm currently doing.
Right.
So if there's a bit of code that I have to write, I will generally run that through an AI first to get what I need and then work from there. The other thing I'm doing with it is like looking at contracts. Run the contract through it to look for anything that might be something that we wouldn't want to sign.
Right. Looking for clauses that you can miss.
Yeah, because
as they're reading through.
Exactly. Like before we send it to the legal team to make sure that everything's as it should be.
Yeah.
We like to review it first so that there's less back and forth.
Absolutely.
So the things that we can catch beforehand, and I'm not a legal expert.
Right.
So I say, here's the contract. Does it have this type of clause? And it'll say yes or no. And I'll generally review the contract anyway, but it'll catch things that I'll miss.
Absolutely. So that is a really good point. You're saving time, and not only your own time, but the legal team's time.
Yep.
you can literally make suggestions or say, hey, or have concerns already that you wouldn't have had a clue on beforehand. I'm using it I've been using AI tools now for maybe a couple of years, maybe a year and a half, probably a couple of years now, to help with creative writing. And I've seen that get better and better, and until today, where I was preparing for this script and writing what I wanted to talk about, and I was just asking, and you need to stick around for the ending if you're watching this, because the very last thing I say is being written by AI, and it might just blow your little mind. It blew my mind. So that's coming up soon. So let's start. Let's talk about this. And I'm going to go through some points really quickly, and some of them we'll dive into a bit deeper, and I'll get your thoughts on them, Steve.
Sure.
But that's what's happening. It suddenly hit me with my own family. I'm like, this is going to affect what happens in the future for my children. And I don't think schools and learning institutions are adapting quick enough to it. My son, who is he's using ChatGPT, which is one of the most prominent tools at the moment, to help him in his assignments. Now, I've been very clear to him to say, don't use it to write, but we were analyzing a movie, and we were able to ask the AI specifically, where are some points in this movie that talk about this, use this metaphor, or whatever the assignment was. And you've got to be very careful not to let the tool do the job, but it helped me as the dad who was trying to help my son, and I'm like, I don't really know, but let's find out together.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the first thing I want to talk about is employment support. So in the past, when there was mass unemployment in our societies, it was generally during a recession. It was generally in a time where the last big one was the 2008-9 financial crisis, GFC. It wasn't in America, it really hit hard. In Australia, not so much. We were kind of insulated from it, but in a lot of countries around the world, it really impacted in different ways. But it impacted everybody to a certain degree, and everybody was on the same page. We are in a recession, there's less money going around, and we're all in this together. But I think what you'll find is in the future going forward for pastoral care and looking after the people in your church, we're going to be dealing with people who are not losing their job because of recession. In fact, their company may be making more money than ever, but they're losing their job because their job no longer exists. And that's been replaced.
Yeah, and technology has always done that. It's an unfortunate kind of consequence of developing better and better technology. Ages past, you had switchboard operators to connect your phone to somebody else's phone. And then, electronic switching came around, and every switchboard operator eventually lost their job. So we're experiencing that just on a larger scale because you have something that's going to affect multiple different industries. All at the same time, relatively.
And it started with the tech industry. Tens of thousands of people have been laid off from Microsoft, other big tech companies. I'm trying to think of other big tech companies.
Google.
Maybe Apple, Google,
Amazon.
And you're seeing the impact potentially of AI because these companies, their stock price it's taken a hit this year, but it's bouncing back pretty good because they're saving money on all those employees and they're becoming more profitable as a company. And so these poor employees are sitting there going, I wasn't let go because my company couldn't afford me. It's because my job is no longer required. So that is going to leak into so many other areas where one of the pastors in our church, Vince, who's an absolute legend, during seasons of time where people are facing unemployment, he would often, he's done this before, where he'll, every Friday morning, anybody in the church is welcome to come into church here, and he will literally pray specifically for jobs for people. And it's just a way as a pastor really going, hey, we're going to do what we can. You're able to come in on a Friday morning because you don't have a job, so come in, I'm going to pray for you specifically, we're going to support you in any way. In the job hunt, right? And it's not, and there are obviously very practical ways churches can get involved, but I think we're going to see a lot of that where a lot of people in our church are desperate because there's a desperation that has come in because it's not everybody, some people are doing fantastic. Some people are absolutely making the best income of their lives, but not everybody is going to do it. So that's the first impact I think that you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about what is going to happen in the coming years. Second thing is, and by the way, Steve, if you think I'm wrong on any of these, you just jump in.
Yeah, sure.
These are just my thoughts because I have been wrong, and I'll actually talk about that now, what I was wrong about.
Talking
about digital natives, which is kids that grow up in immersed in technology, even more than I was. I got my first computer in 1991, 2 or something. It was an IBM SX 386 SX25, 25 megahertz, 4 megabytes of RAM.
Yep.
And I was native to the internet. Like, I got a Hotmail address in 96, which was before Hotmail was bought by Google. I was there at the beginning of the internet, but I'm not necessarily a digital native with just digital tools. And 15 years ago, I made a prediction at a kids' pastors conference somewhere. And I talked about, as kids would grow up, I believed that they would grow up with an innate ability to mistrust information on the internet because of a healthy skepticism. And I said that was a good thing because it would allow them to filter out what is now being called fake news. Has that happened? Well, no. Since I've talked about that, the opposite has happened. People are more gullible than ever. I was caught recently by seeing the Pope in a puffer jacket 3 days ago. I thought, wow, that's a hip Pope. No, it's not a real photo. It was just somebody had created this puffer jacket for the Pope. And so I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So if fake news is fooling so many people now, and more the damage is done by the image just going out and then people believing it instantly. What do you think about that? Or is it going to get better or worse?
I think it really depends on the news corporations. Like, if you have an image and it gets sent out, right? If you see it on social media, there's a certain level of distrust that I think everybody has by now. If it's on social media, like, is it true? Is it not? But once news companies start picking it up and reporting on it without fact checking anything, then there's a certain air of reliability. So I think it's going to come down to the big news agencies and
so it's the big, I guess, the big companies being responsible. Yeah, responsibility comes down to that.
Going back to the ages of fact checking everything before putting it out. Like, and you might not be the first to put it out.
Yeah.
But at least what you put out is correct.
Exactly. I do think we will find a way to solve this technologically in a certain way. I think we will get some kind of technology will come along which will help us verify the authenticity of images.
Yes. I think that we sort of have that already.
Right.
Like with what's it? Geotagging?
Sure.
So you geotag an image.
Yep.
So you know where it was taken. That's probably easy to spoof at the moment, but could have technologies surrounding that so that it was taken from this camera in this location.
Yeah.
And the things like the Pope, if you know what camera and where and when, right? But the Pope was speaking in a cathedral somewhere, then that image can't be correct.
It's a tricky situation. I'm hopeful. I think it could get better, and I do think our kids will grow up now not trusting what they first see. Maybe I don't know. I do see technological solutions coming.
Growing up, my parents always said, don't believe everything you read.
Yeah.
Don't believe everything you see.
I've been caught. Even me, as a true digital internet native, I still get caught out on certain things, especially when it kind of verifies something I always believed. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's. I think that's one of the risks of AI, right? Because AI will inherently have its own biases. Yeah. Because it's created, and if you don't work those out, it's going to reinforce your beliefs. Yeah. Whether they're correct or incorrect.
Exactly. And so really the danger is just people jumping on your own. I think for us as believers, followers of Jesus, the idea of we really like to jump on things that justify our own beliefs.
But that's a natural human response. Like they've even done studies on that. If there's something that aligns with what you are valuing or what you're thinking, your brain is much more likely to accept that fact than even if it's true, and it does not align with what you're thinking. Yeah. Your brain will go, "Oh, I don't actually believe that."
So we're seeing more polarization in beliefs. spurred on, in a sense, a lot by just these fake narratives and stories. And there might come at some point come an inflection point, but also I think with the changing of a generation, again, I think a lot of the times it is my parents' age that believe things more. I don't know. It's a real tricky. I don't really know where it's going to go because it could go either way. But I do know if the pendulum is swung over here, there's a tendency for it to swing back towards the mean, towards the average.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that in the next few years we'll see less issues with that, especially as we get some digital tools to help us. The next thing we're going to talk about is Bible learning being turbocharged. And I was thinking about this. Those who are truly invested in Bible scholarship, those who are curious, who do not have the time to go to a theological school or study theology, we are taking down, in a sense, the brick walls, and we're going to get access to a lot more academic learning that can be explained to us in a terms that we can understand. I've been to academic conferences and heard people talk, and I've gone away from them and said, I don't know what they just said. There's a lot of use of the phrase vis-a-vis, which is that, which I didn't even know,
right?
Latin, which that term I didn't know for a long time. And I've gone away not knowing more, but I think these tools are going to help break down the consensus of a lot of theological academic work, which I think is really valuable. And I think it really helps us to understand the Bible more, especially in things like you were saying to me about context of Bible verses.
Yeah. A lot of Bible reading is knowing the context in which it was written. So, without that context, it gets a bit confusing sometimes.
A good example would be there's a lot of debate about the rubbish dump outside of Jerusalem, which was called Gehenna, I think it was. And people are like, well, that was on fire, and so that was the gates of hell, and it was a metaphor for hell. And other people are like, well, that's a real hell. Like one example. Yeah. And you could dive into that topic and go, well, was there really a rubbish dump outside of Jerusalem called Gehenna? I think that's what if I remember correctly. So you could dive into the context of that. Yeah. And you could explore not just preachers, sermons about it, but actual academic study. And I think that's really, really valuable. And also that whole sermon preparation, just going, hey, there's a lot of different beliefs about this verse. What is the academic consensus about this verse? So you could see from outside your own theological camp, as it were.
AI, you're still it's not gonna be perfect. Like you won't.
No, exactly.
You shouldn't take it. You shouldn't take it as gospel, because again, the biases that I mentioned before. Yeah. Right. If it's learning on a whole bunch of some denomination and and you're looking for information on the other denomination, it might not get that, and it might give you incorrect information.
It's very true.
Where if you're looking at a concordance or something like that, it's kind of vetted through academia. Yeah. Where an AI, it doesn't really vet anything through. It takes material from different sources and then compiles it as best as it knows how.
So I would see an opening here for a publishing company to build an AI that references academia. Yeah. So you could train an AI based on all papers published online. Just having a source to that would be an opportunity for someone to build that. Yeah. Because I wouldn't trust
as long as it's as long as it's not saying this is what this means. Yeah. But this is what
has been read about, spoken about this.
The vast majority are saying this, but there's also fringe saying this and
absolutely. This. So for you and for me, I've been using AI for creative writing, especially for writing curriculum for kids. It's very helpful at that, but also you don't just use it verbatim. That always helps me get over, I need to say something about this. Helps me get through the writing block. Yeah. In the future, I do think we'll see an AI for theology that will be very helpful for average people to break down the big concepts of how we think about God.
And back to the language, it'll help with the Greek and the Hebrew. what the words
right.
means,
Yes.
what the words meant in a historical context.
If you see, as was what I was saying, if you see someone quote Strong's Concordance when they're talking about Bible translation, that's not, they need to learn more. 100-year-old Strong's Concordance is not up to date.
No.
And it's not a reliable, even Strong himself said it was just it's a primer, it's a basic understanding. So for me, that's always been great, is to go deeper beyond Strong's Concordance, especially for translation as well. Looking at the how words we use could be very valuable. So I'm excited about that. I'm actually really excited about the tools that are coming for learning Bibles. Quick one, another area that I think is going to be impacted is enhanced language translation. We have translators at our church in major languages, but yeah, you'll just need your phone. And the AI will translate the message. So as churches here, we're going to be really able to reach languages and people in your community that maybe you couldn't reach before, you couldn't communicate with.
Yeah.
I think it's a quick one. I think it's a no-brainer.
I mean, it's certainly come a long way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, already it's... when I traveled last overseas, Google app, you could just say something to the app and it would say it in their language. That's only going to, if that's already doing that now, by 2030, who knows what that could look like. Let me see, was there anything else, any other area I wanted to talk about? Turbocharging economic, digital natives, training. Steve, let's just say I want to train you up in ministry and I know your strengths, I know your personality. I can then ask an AI to generate a training. What does Steve need to focus on to reach the next stage of his leadership? And I think that's going to be really valuable. It's just going, because our biases are we want to learn the way we want to teach people the way we learn.
Yeah.
But I know the way that I learn is not like you, and I think that so training and discipleship could be really enhanced by AI helping us plan and help others learn and what the next step on their journey is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Any thoughts on that?
I think it'll be extremely useful for that. Mostly because, when you've got how big is your average team? Like under one like.
I mean, you at least a dozen people like Jesus, right?
Yeah. Okay. So
maybe you got 12 people.
A dozen people that you have to spend the mental energy to figure out, okay, what am I going to do for this person? What am I going to do for this? What books do they need to read? This and that. Yeah. And generally, leaders, and it's not a shot on anybody, but leaders will go, here's a book that was impactful for me.
Yeah.
It might be good for you, and then hand out 12 books. With more insight into a person's development, that leader could go, okay, well, what books were impactful for me? Why were they impactful for me? Are there books that could be same impact, but given in a different way for these different people?
And that is doable right now. One of the things I've been doing on AI is training. So writing a novel, writing a book, you actually give it the chapters you've already written. I've tried this out a couple of times. Given the first 4 chapters, and you say, given all this information, what should happen in chapter 4?
Yeah.
And it can tell you what's chapter 4. Now what it's basically doing, it's not just the knowledge that it has, but it's the context that you're giving it. And there are lots of ways to train an AI with your own style and your own information, and remind the AI using this information. So that's possible right now. In fact, I should try that. If you've got someone who's done StrengthsFinder, or Myers-Briggs a bit old school now, but all those personality tests, you could feed and say, I have a team member named Carl, Bob, Susan. Here is their strengths, top 10 strengths from StrengthsFinder. Here is this, this, and this. I would love to help them learn more about this. What do you suggest? And that, I think... I'm actually keen to give that a test and try that out, but I think only more so in the future. Steve, is there anything else? Have I missed anything you'd like to bring up before I talk about one of my favorite authors?
Oh, your favorite author. No, go for it.
Okay. To wrap this up, Steve, because again, we don't want to there's lots more to be said. If you would like to ask us any questions, if you want to get Steve back here, if you want me to do another session on this, talk more in depth, thevault@hillsong.com. Email us any questions, and we will get, I will have a look and do my best to look at it. I want to finish on a couple of thoughts here, and I want to finish with something that the AI wrote for me to finish this little session here. But Len Sweet said he believes different scriptures seem to pop at different times in history. We know in my lifetime, through the 90s and early 2000s, what was going really well was end times theology, the Left Behind series. And that, for me, was a defining part of my teenage Christian life, was really believing that who the Antichrist was and what country they were going to be born in. I read
and it was definitely going to happen on New Year's Eve 1999, right?
I will say this. In a Christian bookstore on New Year's Eve, or a couple of weeks before it. No, it was after the Y2K bug didn't happen, in the first week of 2020. And there was an author, I won't say his name, but in the book, he had predicted that the Y2K bug would bring around the one world currency, okay? So, but they hadn't removed the book from sale. No, they just put a slip of paper that said, this, even though the author was wrong about this, the rest of the book is still valid. And at that moment, that's when I began to go, you know what? Maybe it's not about end time theology. Maybe there's a little bit of money involved in this whole industry. But that was revelation was big in that moment in time in history, for bad and for worse, for good, for richer, for poorer, whatever. But it was, and right now the second most search Bible verse after John 3:16 is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope in the future. Still today, we're concerned about our future, and we're worried about the plans and feeling like there's purpose in our lives, which makes sense in our current culture. I asked an AI, what Bible verse would be seen as important in a world where AI tools like ChatGPT are impacting society? That was the prompt that I gave it. By the way, a few weeks ago, I realized there was a new job created in the instant where ChatGPT came out. Prompt engineering became a thing. And within about a week, there were gigs on Fiverr.com, which you can pay people to do jobs for you. Prompt engineers were starting to pop up everywhere. I'll help you create the best prompt for the AI. That's one of the jobs maybe my son can get as he gets older. But so that prompt that I gave the AI is a specific one. I've learnt how to word things to get the best result. So I asked it, what Bible verse would be seen as important in a world where AI tools like ChatGPT are impacting society? Here's what it said. First of all, it said, I do not have any personal beliefs, but
that's good to know.
Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. Proverbs 16:3. This is what it wrote to finish our discussion here today, Steve. This verse encourages us to trust in God and seek His guidance in all of our endeavors, including the development and use of technological tools like AI. It reminds us that ultimately it is God who establishes our plans and directs our paths, even in the midst of rapid technological change. As we navigate the challenges and opportunities presented by AI and other technological advancements, it's important to remember that our faith in God and His plan for our lives should remain at the center of our decision-making and actions. I didn't write that, Steve.
No, that was an AI.
AI wrote that. It's pretty good.
It is pretty good.
And I do think it really says a lot. Like, commit your plans. Like, we don't know what the future will hold for this technology. But even in the midst of it, we won't really know what happened until we get to look back and say, oh, that's what happened. So to finish off, thank you, AI tool.
Thank you.
for comforting us in a time of need. Thanks, Steve, for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a real blessing. By the way, ask us a question, thevault@hillsong.com. See you next time on The Vault. See ya.